Ow! My toe. Why does something so small have so many pain receptors on it? So, you have the talent and the ambition to go to a top university, and now you want to know if the lifestyle is truly something you can cope with. After all, universities like Cambridge are some of the most well-known and prestigious universities in the world. And with that prestige comes a highly demanding course that will stretch you for time week after week. And if you're thinking about natural sciences at Cambridge in particular, then you're signing yourself up for the biggest rollercoaster ride in the park, as even the Cambridge University website can't help but admit how demanding this course really is. In fact, a lot of rumours have spread around about Cambridge natural scientists dealing with 50-hour weeks or Saturday lectures, etc. But how many of these speculations are true? Well, in this video I'm going to break it down, with first-hand insights into life as a Cambridge natural scientist during my first year. I'm also going to try and give some tips on how you can deal with the academic stress while maintaining some sort of work-life balance, or even just things that I should have done at the time. But why should you listen to some random guy on the internet? Well, if you don't know me, hi, I'm Memorize. I study natural sciences at the University of Cambridge and will soon be starting a master's there back in September. During the last few years, I've also helped other students gain offers to study at Cambridge University at their top choice college. So I have a decent amount of insights. And if you need any more of a reason to listen to me, I actually have my schedule during my first year of university, so you know that it's going to be good insights. So without further delay, let's analyse it. Upon initial inspection, there's two main conclusions that we can draw. Number one, it's quite filled up. Number two, it's colourful. So let's break down each colour first, which represent each module. Green is biology of cells, blue is physiology of organisms, orange is evolution and behaviour, and purple is mathematical biology. Within each module you have lectures, practicals and supervisions. Now, if supervisions jump out at you as a nuanced term of academic vocabulary, you're not the only one, as supervisions, or tutorials as they're called in Oxford, are unique to these two universities. Briefly, they're small classes of 2 to 3 students to one academic, where you get to explore lecture content in greater detail. More on them on another video if you'd like. Within each colour we have different shades, where light colours are practicals, medium colours are lectures, and dark colours are supervisions. Then we have turquoise for extracurriculars, but the shade doesn't matter here. A crucial thing to note is that this only includes contact hours, aka lessons organised by the university. This does not include the alternative, which are non-contact hours, which are independent times of study, such as writing essays, doing worksheets, going over lectures, or whatever else. I'll roughly try and highlight each week when I would fit in my non-contact hours, but to be honest they kind of varied each week, so even I'm not too sure. But without further ado, let's dive into the start of the week. Which the astute of you might have noticed that it starts on Thursday. Cambridge Academic Week starts on Thursday, which is quite nice because then Wednesday tends to be a little bit more chill where more student events are going on and just a bit more relaxed. Not for natural scientists though, we've still got work to do. Now Thursday looks pretty jam-packed with little room to even fit a meal in, so let's break it down. First up, 3 lectures on 3 different modules, so Thursday really requires you to hit the ground running and be prepared for your lectures. Straight after lectures we have an extracurricular session, where I'd cycle to a primary school to do some teaching assistant work. Looking back, I probably should have used this time to consolidate my lecture notes, especially because straight after my extracurricular work, I had a practical to do for mathematical biology. Thankfully though, these were online, usually just learning some sort of data analysis in R. So I'd basically just cycle straight back to college and get on it. And once I finished that practical, I would be typically quite fatigued, but with a supervision coming up. So I had a choice. Do I prepare for my supervision despite the fatigue and really make sure I get the most out of it, or do I just rest and recharge? Usually I just rest and recharge. I kinda got away with it as well because my supervisor was really chill and maths bio was always my strong point. And I'd usually come in my football kit half the time. Thank the Lord my supervisor was nice. After my supervision, I'd go straight to football training for 2 hours, which was a nice way to de-stress from quite a busy day. Then I'd get back to my accommodation, eat, shower, sleep. Overall, quite a hectic start to the week, with not much time to go over lectures or continue my essays. Thus, this left me with a bit of a backlog of work to be done on Friday. Thankfully though, those 3 lecture days are balanced out with 1 lecture days on Friday, which gave me a bit of time in the morning to go over the lectures on Thursday, which I never did because I woke up late. Friday looks very green, and that's because this day was purely dedicated to biology of cells. As a preemptive thought, if breaking down each module such as biology of cells or physiology of organisms would be an insightful video for you, then let me know, and I'll do one. Straight after my lecture, I'd have a biology of cells practical. These were quite fun. They were lab-based, they were interactive, and they usually involved learning a new technique, such as using oxygen electrodes or microscopes. They would usually last the rest of the day though, going from 11 AM to 5 PM with a little lunch break in between, and would usually leave with a write-up to do afterwards, meaning this day was solely biology of cells focused despite the backlog of lectures I still had from the day before. So usually I'd cycle straight back to college while it was still fresh in my head and immediately do my write-up. This would usually take about an hour, at which point I would spend another 2 hours going over my lectures from the day before and submitting an essay for Saturday. Then it was food, chill and bed, for a total of 7 contact hours and about 2 to 3 non-contact hours. Quite a frantic start to the Cambridge week, but surely we've earned a bit of a lie-in now that it's the weekend, right? No. Well, now it's time to answer the infamous question. As a Cambridge student, will you have Saturday lectures? And the answer to that is, it depends on the subject. But as a natural scientist first year, yes, you will have Saturday lectures. Better yet, there's 3 of them, and they start at 9 AM. Don't say I didn't warn you. At the end of the day, in your first year, you've just got to firm it and power through. And it's kind of something you get used to a little bit. But do be prepared to stumble into these lectures sleep deprived while you question why you chose Cambridge in the first place, along with the rest of your NASCI cohort. After my lectures, I had a few hours to prepare for my physiology of organism supervision, which I'd usually spend going over notes and making sure I understood the content. If you would like a more in-depth exploration as to what supervisions are in the first place, let me know and I'll do a video on them. But typically I'd leave with an essay to write for next week's supervision that I'd have to get done by about Thursday or Friday night. I'd finish the day with jiu-jitsu at the Cambridge Sports Centre, which I really got into in my first year. Then the rest of the night was mine to go over lectures, maybe start one of my essays, or spend time with friends. So Saturday total here was 4 contact hours and about 2 to 3 non-contact hours. Sunday was the only day without lectures, meaning I could stay within the comfort of my own college buttery, aka cafe. Or my room if I was feeling really introverted. During the day I'd do a bit of everything. I would consolidate some of my lectures from the day before, start one of my essays, or complete one of my worksheets for mathematical biology. My main goal was the essays though, as biology of cells and evolution and behaviour had an essay deadline for Monday night. The hours I'd work during Sunday tended to range just depending on how much work I had to get done. At which point I'd usually spend the evening unwinding through going to the gym or spending time with friends. Monday was a nice slow start to the actual week, with just 1 lecture and a bi-weekly practical. Evolution and behaviour practicals were always some of my favourites too, as I always found it so fascinating to examine human skulls or measure animal behaviour, so I'd always come into Monday quite enthusiastically, which is more than I can say about Mondays now with a 9 to 5. In between my lecture and my practical, I'd usually spend this time again just finishing off my essay and submitting it. So this day overall was 3 hours of contact and 3 to 4 hours of non-contact work. At which point I'd finish the day with jiu-jitsu. Like I said, I got quite into it in first year. Overall, not bad workload for a Monday. Let's move on to Tuesday. I associate first year Tuesdays with a mild underlying feeling of lethargy, as the combination of late night jiu-jitsu and an early 9 AM always left me a little bit sleep deprived. And compounding onto my mental sluggishness was another 3 lecture day, which never gave me enough time to go over my lecture notes, let alone get a nap in. Especially given that 2 hours after my lectures, I'd have my evolution and behaviour supervision, so I'd usually spend this time going over my lectures and making sure I was prepared with questions. Quick tip though, I'd always recommend going into supervisions prepared and up to date with lectures, so you have things to talk about and questions to ask. Otherwise, you're going to be left with a very awkward hour of you trying to pretend you're not 2 weeks behind on lectures, which never works out for anyone. Trust me, I found out the hard way. Afterwards, I had a 3-hour gap before football training, which I'd usually spend eating, going over notes and preparing my supervision essay that had just been set. Afterwards, I had a nice 2-hour football session before showering and going to bed. And finally, Wednesday, which capped off the week with a nice lecture, supervision and a bi-weekly practical. These practicals usually involve just me and my mates messing about with whatever equipment they gave us, like microelectrodes to study action potentials. And there was no write-up to do for this practical, which was a nice relief, as it gave me time to do my worksheet for mathematical biology the next day that I definitely forgot about at this point. And to finish off the week was a biology of cells supervision at 7 PM, because my supervisor was a medic who worked around the clock. This final supervision was always the most arduous, as firstly it was so late, secondly biology of cells was my worst subject, and thirdly my supervisor was brutally honest about my essays. But I'd get it done, head back to my accommodation, and recharge to do it all again the next day. And that's it. That was my weekly timetable as a Cambridge natural scientist, for a total of 27 contact hours a week. Now, I forgot to mention before that my weeks do change, and you may have had this inclination if you looked in the top left where it says week 2. Essentially we have a week 1 and a week 2, and then it repeats. But week 1 only changes in that we don't have an evolution and behaviour or a physiology practical. So those weeks were 22 hours of contact work a week. Ultimately, quite hefty for a student, but 27 hours a week is still manageable. But when we factor in non-contact hours, we get a working week that ultimately varies depending on who you talk to. It's generally said that a Cambridge natural scientist will have about 20 hours of non-contact work a week, which, if you factor in the 20 to 25 hours of contact work a week, we generally get a working week of 40 to 45 hours. Which is quite a lot, to be fair. But in practice, while the contact hours will generally stay consistent across students, the non-contact hours will vary wildly. For instance, I know people that went above and beyond, sacrificing hours of sleep to become an academic weapon, and ultimately working maybe close to 30 non-contact hours a week. But I've also seen people on the other end of the spectrum, shutting off their laptop and throwing away their notes as soon as that final lecture finishes and not touching it until exam season. And somehow they end up passing, which is beyond me. Me personally, I sort of was in the middle to lower middle area, not really knowing how much work I could have really been doing, and ultimately doing just enough to pass, which was quite a relief in the end. So if I was to give a rough ballpark, I probably did about, overall, 35 to 40 hours of work a week. So while the Cambridge Natural Sciences life is demanding, there are definitely ways to help you cope with the hectic lifestyle. For example, scheduling in your non-contact hours and optimizing it based on your best times of work. Me personally, I used to be more of a night owl, so I used to do my non-contact hours of work later on in the evening to preserve my time to sleep and so I can have a more chill morning. And I'd also recommend just reaching out to someone if the work just becomes too burdensome, such as your director of studies or your tutor. As demonstrated, a Cambridge degree is intense and will demand a lot of your time and mental capacity. So if you're struggling with the workload, you're not the only one, especially with the amount that's thrown at you right after A-levels. So use the support systems, because they're there for a reason, to help students in need. And while it's definitely challenging to ask for help, if you don't ask you won't get any, because a closed mouth can't be fed. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope this gave you some valuable insights into life as a Cambridge natural scientist first year. Hopefully you're still enthused to go to a top university, and this video just made you a little bit more prepared to tackle university life head on. In which case I plan to do more videos like this, talking about my time at university and generally just mentioning things I wish I knew when I first started. Ultimately, I just enjoy making these videos and I want to better prepare students for trying to get in, or even when they are in, making the most of their time at such a prestigious institution. So if that sounds like something you'd enjoy or benefit from, feel free to subscribe as I grow this channel towards becoming the next Ali Abdal. Or for now, just find a way to use my free time. Goodbye.